Hello guys, and welcome back to the MR2 build. So in this video we'll be continuing where we left off in the last part, and that will be the wheel spacers. I'm going to take this to sandblaster, get rid of all this nasty silver paint and give it a fresh coat of black. And also the lug nuts came in, so this is being installed also. So in this video we will have this completely done, and the next thing we're moving on to is the shocks. So the shocks in this car, they're not in the best condition. I think they're savable, I think we should be okay, but the next step, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to take off the shocks, bring them in here, and let's examine them and see how bad they are. And that went south pretty fast. This didn't go how I expected this to go. If this is what I've got to expect going forward, it's not good. So what is wrong with this? As you've seen, the first issue I had was this. So this is a little like a lug nut in your wheel hub, and a bit like what we're going to do later with the spacer. You press this in, it's got some splines here across the top, and once this is pushed in theory, that is it. That should be there permanently, just like these. And you can torque this down and that shouldn't change whatsoever. However, as you can see, this is just spinning, and someone in the past has tried to glue, maybe? Not quite sure what that is. Yeah, so that hasn't worked. So that's my first issue. It's not a huge deal. Fortunately, the way with these springs, the shocks, the way you can get them off is you can actually, because there's loads of room in the wheel arch, I actually was able to put some clamps on. So while I was on the car, I actually clamped the spring down and compressed it. When the spring was loose on the strut, I literally removed the nut off the top and just pulled the cap off, and this whole bottom dropped out. Now, if I could probably weld this in, I think. There's rubber on this side, so that won't be ideal. I could maybe get a tiny tack weld or something in there, or I don't know. I'll have to see what I want to do about this, because that is something I wasn't expecting to encounter. But I guess I could maybe get this in, use a ratchet to tighten it down, and then once this is in place and torque to spec, I could then feed this back up the same way I took it off. Not ideal, but that could work. Second issue, which is what we all expect, is the just boot has perished, which, you know, these things generally last maybe 4 or 5 years before they start cracking. So if this is from the 90s, then fair game to it. It's part existed through its life, so it's not too bad, is it? Now these do rust, and they all rust, and generally this kind of condition of rust is what you normally expect to see. Now, yeah, the paint's peeled a bit, which is expected, but it looks pretty good, to be fair. I mean, yeah, I'll probably run that. I can't see that being a problem. It's just the paint. I think once this is cleaned up, it won't look half as bad. I still think the spring itself is perfectly fine. I think it's just a case of the paint's peeling off. So we'll strip this back and, yeah, maybe give it like a paint, and hopefully this will actually turn out okay. This is a deciding factor. Now, picking up for these, the struts themselves, these actually can be changed out, but the cost of these is crazy, and the cost of one of these alone, it'll make sense to just buy coilovers, because if you're going to replace this, you may as well put a new spring on, and then you're talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds. You may as well just go all in and get coilovers. However, we'll test this. If this has the same resistance going down as it does going up, then that should be fine. If I put pressure on this and it goes down, drops, no good. Same thing coming up. If I'm pulling it and it's got resistance, and then it's off, no good. So one thing you may notice is that pushing down is a little easier than pulling up. That's just your strength basically, but what you're looking for is the continuous amount of resistance that you get. You want a steady straight down motion. You want no jerkiness, you want nothing like that, no wobbling of the piston itself, which seems to be okay. So let's push this down and pull it back up and see where we stand. So it's a nice slow, it's constant. There's no stopping and starting. Even if I push a lot harder, it still kind of goes at the same speed. Yeah, happy with that. So this looks a mess, and it's actually still going. This looks a mess. It needs a good clean up and a bit of paint, but I think this can be saved. One thing I want to check with this is for cracking. So around there seems to be fine, and all this rubber here you want to see for cracking. Hopefully so that looks to be okay as well. So I'll put this in a vise and I'll try and move it left and right. There should be no knocking or anything shouldn't be twisting or moving around. It should be quite a firm, slight movement, slight rocker motion. That's all you should get from this. So we'll check that out in a second, but hopefully this will be okay. Yeah, so starting off with this issue, I kind of thought myself I've got no chance, but now I've inspected the entire system and I'm happy. Now I've got to make a disclaimer. I know a lot of you out there will complain about this, saying what you're doing, this is trash, just go out and buy a new one. The reason is I want coilovers. Down the line, I want coilovers on this car. It's just the obvious upgrade. And I could drive a quarter mile and this car might just die in itself and just be scrap value. So I don't want to go out and spend £750 or whatever it's going to be on coilovers when I've got these. And I want to progress with the next stage of the car, because I might come to a position where I want to pass it on to someone else, or I want to keep it and maybe give it a respray. I have no idea at this point. I haven't actually decided the future of this project. The shock's perfectly fine. In fact, it's actually came all the way back up by itself. So yeah, I'm gonna call this good. And I think the next step is to go outside and pull the next three off. So let's get that done now. Why do the little things cause you so much problems? This one came off pretty much without a problem. Even the drop link, everything just went smoothly. This one didn't round off at the top, so they're all still intact. One thing I did notice is that for some reason the rear shocks, when you have 2 bolts each holding it in, one's missing on each, so not too sure what's going on there. So I would say this one is in identical condition to the other side, which makes sense because they probably came off the same donor car. The front ones, first thing I've noticed is the dust boot is completely gone. You have the tiniest amount at the top, which is pretty much doing nothing. But I'm sure there's something that goes in the top, because this top plate here is angled, it's not straight. And generally when something is angled, you normally have a rubber boot in between, which this doesn't seem to have, which is probably why the spring feels a bit loose. So if we were to reuse these, I'm probably going to have to source... Oh, will I just make a knocking noise maybe? Must be a reason why it's up there. Might actually be up there, I'll have to double check that. The bearing at the top sounds actually alright. Can't feel any play. The shock itself looks pretty rough, but it's a surface rust. So once this is all cleaned up, I think this will actually look pretty damn good. And this is the other side. They're pretty much identical. These have worn identically, so they must have been put on at the same time, I'm guessing. These springs aren't too clever, are they? There's a lot of corrosion. To be fair, it's not much of a spring, is it? It's what? It's only 4 coils. On that side, it's 5. Well, yeah, 4 again. 5 if you come here. Putting a spring clamp on this, in fact, actually, I suppose you won't even need a spring clamp, would you? You could probably just take the top straight off. So that'll make things a bit easier. It's nice to still got the cap on. Front strut number 1, and I'm very happy, really happy. This is perfectly fine. The edges of the straight lines at the side there, the straight edges, they're fine. The cup is intact, it's not bent or damaged. As you guys can see, when you push down, nice and firm, consistent, absolutely no problems here. When you let go, straight back up. That is not oil, by the way, that is WD-40. They just want to lubricate inside there in case there's any dirt or debris. I didn't want to scratching the piston. Can you hear that? Now, it could be the bearings are gone, but it could just be there's muck inside. I mean, it's pretty dirty down there. I think with a good clean and plenty of air and some fresh grease, in fact, can you see all the muck just coming up? It's like pooling out. It's like mud. They don't sound great, but there's no play. So I think there's just dirt inside them. So what I did is just put some WD-40 through and blow it out with the airline, and just keep doing it over and over and over again, and the amount of dirt and gunk and grime that came out was disgusting. No wonder it was crunching. So basically what I did, scraped all this grease out, WD-40, filled it, got my air compressor and blasted the air through, and literally all the slime and gunk and mud and just nasty grease came on the bottom. Kept doing that till the bearings were basically dry, and then repacked them using ball bearing grease. So when we compare that to this, can you hear that? That isn't as bad, so that can definitely be cleaned. If that, because that was worse, if that can be saved, this can definitely be saved. So as I was saying before, these are keyed. It's moving up. These are keyed and they've got a flat spot on each side. And can you see that bit of shiny silver? Basically that is where someone's put the top on and not lined up and just basically impacted it or torqued it down, whichever method they used. They've done some damage. As you can see, the damage is more so here, so I'm just hoping I can get that back on, because it's very important that the piston does sit in this keyed area. It can't rotate, else it'd be useless. So hopefully we can get this back together and that shouldn't be a problem. But really that is the only major issue that I've actually came across. I may put some metal restorer on. It's basically a paint you paint over and it soaks in and goes black, and it repairs the metal as such, it seals it. I might put some of that on, and I've got some Hammerite, smooth black. Yeah, I could paint them smooth black and I think that'll look pretty good. The wire brush probably would be enough. It really would. These are nowhere near as bad as I expected. I could put them in the sandblaster. I could put these bits in the sandblaster. The smaller bits would be perfectly fine. So the suspension has been through the sandblaster, and as you can see, it's complete. So the next stage is to now paint them. The paint I'm going to use is this direct to metal Hammerite, and you can paint it directly to rust. So as you can see, this is not perfect. It doesn't have to be, as long as it's smooth and there's no chunks of rust or any raised bits of metal sticking them anywhere, which there isn't, and they're thoroughly cleaned, which they are. This is perfectly fine. For that reason, I've not went all the way back to the original metal. I've just basically took it back to a level that I can work with, and I think this should be perfectly fine. With this method, using the spacers, I've managed to get all 4 up and ready for paint. What I like about this is I can rotate them around, so I can get all the surface areas. And as you can see, I've sandblasted these also, and these have been taken right back down, and these look fantastic. This texture surface will be great for the paint to adhere to. It's a really good keyed surface. These aren't going to get painted Hammerite, these are going to get painted in heat resistant paint. Don't need to be heat resistant because they don't get that much heat through them, but the actual brake disc themselves, what these bolt onto, is going to be painted with heat resistant paint. So I don't want 2 different shades of black, so I'm just going to bolt these on to the hub of the car and then I'll paint both together, but we'll do that later on. But for the time being, let's lay down some black on these and I'll get back to you. So it's been a few days, the paint is fully dried, these are fully cured and they're ready to be reassembled. And you may also notice there's a few extra parts on the bench, so I've been shopping. So the coil springs, I wasn't going to purchase new coil springs. These ones, to be fair, there's nothing wrong with them. They've been painted. I think they look pretty good. The red's taken to them really well. Compared to this red, they don't look that great, but when you just look at these by themselves, these on here I think will look great. However, some guy local to me was selling these really cheap. They look very similar. They're obviously thicker steel, and they appear to be taller. Now, I've been told these are a 4cm drop along with the front, and I'm hoping these were PI coil springs, and when I googled these appear to be also a 4cm drop. So I'm not too sure why these are a thicker steel and the taller. So in my head I'm assuming these, you know, these won't compress down as much as these ones, so I'd imagine the ride would be higher. But to be fair, the ride before was very low. It's pretty much as low as that car could possibly be. So if this is going to give me an extra centimetre too, to be fair, I'm actually all for that. It'll make life a lot easier, especially my estate alone's got speed bumps, so even just getting out of my estate, I think with these would be a nightmare. So if it does give me an extra centimetre too, I'm not too bothered. But these are perfectly fine, very nice quality rear springs. The front, these Apex, and these are going to look fantastic. I wish the backs were yellow, because I think the yellow and black are going to look fantastic. They will look, it's a perfect combination. These are also a 4cm drop. One thing I did notice is that these have a flat spot and these don't. Also, like I say, I've not measured them. In fact, yeah, maybe they are the same size. These look so much bigger. They look wider and definitely taller. But these have a flat spot and these don't. Now, I never realised this before, but what I have went and picked up is some upper mounts. You know, I'm going to do this job, I may as well do it right, I guess. So I picked up some brand new ones. and these are genuine Toyota parts. And as you can see, this has a flat spot in the actual inside. So I'm guessing, I've not looked online, but logic would tell me that this would sit on the top, flat to flat, and the round curved bit will go in the base. So I don't understand why these don't have that flat spot. I wonder if these are actually from the MR2. I wonder if these are from some completely different car. I hope not, because if that's the case, this is going to be super high, because these could possibly be from a completely different model, could be a completely different manufacturer. So hopefully that's not the case, but I've got these now, so we will reassemble these with these new springs. I'll keep these, I'm not going to chuck them out. I spent a lot of time, I didn't sandblast them before you guys start commenting down below. I used paint stripper. It took a long time. I must have applied it 3 or 4 times, maybe more, and scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing and cleaning, and then applying and scrubbing and scrubbing. It took a long time, and then it took several coats of paint to get them to look as good as this. So I'm definitely not going to chuck them. I've got a lot of time and effort invested in these, so if anything they'll do a spare or a backup, or maybe if I want to load the car one day, I can just shut these out and put these back in. I don't know, but I'm not going to chuck them, so I'm going to keep all of them. So the rear dust covers, I've just used these again. I've cleaned them up and there's nothing wrong with them, apart from the half is missing. But this car is lowered, and I do recall when I seen these on the car, I'm pretty sure they cover the majority of the shock. So for what I'm going to use this car for, and for the short amount of time these are probably actually going to be on the car, they're perfectly fine. The fronts I got brand new, because if you remember, the fronts look like this. So that was doing absolutely nothing whatsoever for the MR2. So picked up from Mr. MR2, picked up some bump stops and some dust protectors. So these should fit, they're from a guy who knows his stuff. So we'll get these put in the front, and I'll reuse the ones in the back. The bearings are all cleaned out and they're perfectly fine. We have pretty much brand new springs. The guy said the car was just sat on these, he didn't like the look of it, so he took them back off. Almost forgot, I also painted these up, sandblasted these and give them a few coats of paint, so they're perfectly fine and they are ready to go also. As you can see, I've got one rear and one for the front is complete and ready to go back into the car. So I picked up some new bushes for the front, the anti-roll bar bushes, and I think before I finish the rest of these, I'm going to go out, pull the anti-roll bar linkage off, bring it in the garage, give it a quick sand, some paint, and then tomorrow, before I install these, I will also install the anti-roll bar bushes. And while I'm there, I picked some of this up the other day under sale, and I'm going to clean the wheel arches up and put down a coat of this. To be fair, this stuff doesn't really ever dry, it kind of stays tacky all the time, but it does need a good few hours at least for it to kind of dry so you can actually work around it. Remove anti-roll bar, clean up the arches and put some under seal on, paint up the anti-roll bar, finish these springs, and then tomorrow reinstall it all. The suspension is all done. I've cleaned all the wheel arches, I have undersealed the wheel arches, I have also put some rust restorer onto the subframe, the suspension, the wishbones, so they are complete. The heat shield on the brake discs, they're also been painted, so they're good to go. These are all complete. I have welded the nut back in. I've just put some spot welds across the top just to hold it in place, because like I mentioned before, when I was trying to take the nut off, this thing just kept spinning, which was a bit of a headache. But these are all in place. There's one thing I do regret, and that is getting the boots for these. As you can see, these are fantastic. These have new boot stops, new dust protectors, and obviously these ones don't. But not to worry, I can get them at a later date, so let's get these in. Suspension is installed, so the next step is the anti-roll bar. I've cleaned this up and I've painted it with Hammerite, and it looks pretty good. And I've also painted the brackets. I've picked up some of these poly bushes, as the ones I took off Not too bad that side. As you can see on that side, it's all cracked. So, have some new ones. The sway bar attaches to the car. This is the front one in this position for the hump before it goes low. And I always put the cut at the rear, which is where it slides over the bar. So that will go there. And that one will go there. Got them in and they're all greased up. What I'm a bit concerned about is this lip. Now, I probably shouldn't have measured these first, but they seem to be a bit taller. Now they are for this car, 18 mil bar, that's a part number. So I'm guessing they'll just compress once I pull the bar up, but we'll soon find out. Also, why install this, we'll be installing some new drop links. These are blueprint ones. I've got a pair for the front, so I'll get these put on now and we'll call that done. The next step I think is to go out and paint the calipers. I've got this lovely graphite grey. It looks pretty good on the calipers, so let's go out, lay down a few coats and let's get these done. So I think we're going to call this one here. We've replaced the bushes. These definitely needed doing for sure. They're both perished. Also the drop links at the front. I'm not sure if I've pointed this out before, but they've actually been repaired or welded together or shortened or possibly extended. I'm not too sure what's going on here, but whatever they've not done a very good job. It's completely, I don't know if it was bent when they first did it. This one's fairly straight, so maybe just over time it's just bent. But these were shot, these are clunking, the rubbers are perished. So they have been replaced, the bushes have been replaced, we've put new springs on, we've put some new dust boots to replace these, because these were well and truly past it. There's not much else we can cover in this video. Pretty much the suspension is fully covered, it's all installed. The car is still up at the minute because I need to do some more work on the underside, but I'll be doing that in the next part. So for now guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.